seen from the agenda that our first panelist or speaker was Abdul Musari, who, due to some family emergency issues, apologized for participating. Is you know that today's panel about Afghan UK-based professional careers insights. So we have very esteemed and people or speakers with very relevant experience that they can share their experiences, skills, achievements, and hurdles that they have faced in order to get through a professional career in the UK. So our first speaker is Ahmad Sabir, who has Master of Science in Banking and Finance from the University of Greenwich. And he is also founder of Premium Mortgage Services, which is based in Oxbridge. And yes, he is very relevant person. Shamim Sarabi and Haidari that I will introduce them when Mr. Ahmad Sabir finished, because then I will give you more details of their bios, which are very rich, like Ahmad Sabir. So without further ado, I will give floor to Ahmad Sabir, but just kind of reminder that you have a maximum of 15 minutes, and I will keep eye on the time, and also a reminder to our audience that when it is time for Q&A, please try to limit your questions to 1 minute and the answers to 2 minutes maximum. Thank you.
Salam and hello everyone. It's a great honor to be here. My name is Ahmad Sabir. I'm a mortgage and protection advisor. I've been in the industry for the last 7 years, joining as an advisor, and then over 4 years ago I set up my own firm as a mortgage advisory firm. What we offer is different mortgage types of residential, buy-to-let, and commercial. Also, we offer life and building insurance, private medical insurance. The list goes on: bridging finance, development finance, and all sorts of finance relevant to properties, or let's say secured loan. That's what we offer. So to rewind back, I came to the UK back in 2006 as a student, and I joined University of Greenwich to complete the bachelor's degree in finance, and then went on to master's in international banking and finance. Immediately after that, I got an opportunity to work as a language consultant for the British Army, and then later on, I tried to get back to my career, which it takes time, and then went on to doing some capability exams to refresh the experience and the knowledge I needed for the advisory role, and then joined another firm. So that took 7 years to where I am today. And I'm fortunate to have been serving British society, members of public, Afghan investors, Afghan first-time buyers. And the clients include high net worth clients, for example, employees of BBC, NHS, KPMG, Afghanistan International, and many more. So that's me. It's more of a business sort of perspective of what I've been doing. And I'll leave it to you guys if you have any question relevant to this. But just the last bit is that in terms of opportunity for Afghan people joining here, no matter as a refugee or as a student or as a skilled worker, Britain is a lovely country. Great opportunity, both on personal and professional levels, in addition to that on economic level. So you grow immensely if you really like to do so. So there are few basic requirements: research, hard work. That's it, to be honest. That's what I've been doing. And just to remind one gentleman who is a poet, his name is Harun Yusufi. Usually he says that no matter what you become in the world, before that, try to be someone good. As simple as that. Be good to everyone, respectful, hardworking, and that's everything. And I've been trying to do this. It works. So that's me. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Ahmad Sabir, for very insightful and brief remarks. Definitely there will be questions, and come back to you later, particularly that you mentioned what is required is future research in our work. So if not, the audience, I'm sure that they will have questions, but I do have my questions as well posed to you. So without further ado, I will now introduce Shamim Sarabi, and who is very well positioned to be part of this panel, because she is actively working with refugees, with the strategies, with Council for Welfare and Immigrant. She is a holder of a Master's in Social Policy from University College London, and she is also actively contributing as a Steer Group member of IMAX, that she will give more information about that in her remarks. Without further ado, just to important to mention that she is also leading research, development research paper, preparing outreach materials to empower refugees in terms of their legal rights. So today she is going to have a presentation on Afghan pro bono initiatives, and over to you, Ms. Sarabi.
Hello everyone. As explained, I'm Shamim Sarabi. I'm working with refugee legal support as a community engagement and research lead of project. I'm also a board member of JCWI and steering group member of IMX. I've just recently joined with IMX, developing their 5 years of strategy for the organization. And I've already worked with the JCWI. We have tried to include voice of lived experience in their working strategy, and that was really good experience. So today I'm not talking about JCWI. I want to talk about the project of the Refugee Legal Support and Safe Passage International. And that project is APDI, or Afghan Pro Bono Initiative. The reason I have selected that topic is because we are all living in a launch on March 2022 by Refugee Legal Support and Safe Passage after fall of Kabul, when they received a significant number of requests for legal representation and legal advice from Afghans in the UK and Afghanistan and its regional countries. So the demands was really high, beyond the capacity of 2 organizations. So they came together with 14 law firms, commercial law firms. They came together and just launched this project. The main aim of this project is to provide legal representation and legal advice to Afghans and their family members. They are in the UK, or they're in Afghanistan, they're eligible under ARP schemes, or they want information about the ACRS scheme, or they have a family members, they want to join them through a family reunion rules. These groups are being supported, but those who have unsettled status or they are asylum seekers, they are not being supported through this project. Over 2 years, last 2 years, over thousands individuals received answers to their inquiries, and those inquiries have been responded by our legal advisors, and over 100 pro bono lawyers are working with the project as well, that all of those lawyers are being recruited by the law firms. So they have a long and deep experience working in the Afghan cases and legal cases. So as I've mentioned, that the demand for receiving legal advice was really high. Even right now, the project is completely inundated by the level of demand, and we have a huge, long waiting list. So that's why the project come up with the other way of how to help Afghan refugees. And one of that is providing online information session. And other information sessions, the lawyers explain about ARAP schemes, who are eligible, what are the requirements to apply for ARAP schemes, what are the deadlines, and how you can prepare your application. The schemes, when you look at that, when you read it, it seems simple, but it's not simple at all. It is truly complicated a scheme. It is very far different than Ukraine scheme, than Syria schemes. It's much more complicated and very narrowed down, defined. So this, through this information session, lawyers explain about what are these schemes and what are the definition of each term. For example, when the schemes are saying that those are eligible under ARAP schemes, they have serious and compelling reasons that they are at risk. But what is really serious and compelling reason? That is not really widely explained. And this explanation is being narrowed down by MOD every time when they update the scheme. So the lawyers have collected that information through their caseworks, and when any application has been prepared or any application being rejected, and then they review the cases and then found out that they find that. So these explain in the information session. And also, it is explained, we are also explaining an information session about family reunion routes. You know that ARAP has an appendix of family reunion appendix, that those, they are coming under ARAP, they're eligible to bring their family members in the UK, and it's also including their additional family members as well. That's the appendix completely separately defined for ARAP. And then how they're being eligible, how they can bring their additional family members. These are being explained. And if you're coming under the ACRS scheme has its own pass 1, 2, and 3, and each one has its own criteria. For example, in pathway 1 and pathway 2, you're not being recognized as a refugee, so you have limitation of family reunion in pathway 1 and 2, while it's different in pathway 3. Or if you're coming with indefinite leave to remain, staying indefinite to remain, and you're under humanitarian protection, you have a different route for family reunion. And who do you want to bring? Your additional family member, your adult, your children, your immediate family members. There are completely different paths and different rules. So these are being explained in our information session by lawyers, and interpretation provided as well. And at the end of each session, there is a Q&A session, and answer the general questions are being answered. What we have learned that during the information session, because each case has its own specific criteria, and it is not possible to answer those questions, and many of them are confidential as well, or specific case-based questions not being answered in a general info session. So the project has come up with a different idea of having drop-in session. That's drop-in legal. Free legal advice drop-in session. That's the opportunity for Afghans to just come up and ask their questions related to their cases directly from the lawyers. And the lawyers have a chance to review their cases in advance, being prepared, and based on their situation, give them advice what kind of information they need, and what routes are open for them, or if there is any availability, what they can do. So that is, we usually conduct drop-in session and information session when we are planning to have these services in the future as well. And the drop-in session is organized by another co-host organization. So if you are working with another legal organization and you have an Afghan client and you're interested, please feel free to come and reach me and we can talk about it. So we also provide informative material as well, like frequently asked questions, and fact sheets and information sheets. But one of the things I want to talk today about is our Arab self-help guide. That is the guide which was developed by a group of expert lawyers, and they have proficiency on Arab cases. And this guide is particularly discussing about the fourth parts of the fourth category of Arab. So the aim of this guide is that it will give a step-by-step explanation of how someone can prepare their application, if they are eligible or not. They can have find it out in the guide, and if they are eligible, how they can prepare their application, how they can prepare their supporting documents, what kind of supporting documents could be better supporting documents. There are also some templates included in the guide that they can refer and prepare their, for example, a statement letter. The links has been included for more example of providing the documents, and also where you can submit your application, where you can collect more information about each section has been included. This is a very comprehensive guide. It is available in English, Dari, and Pashto as well. If you're interested, you can go to the Refugee Legal Support and Safe Passage websites and find a guide. We are planning to prepare the second version of the guide during the next months, but so far this is really good source. It's really, I recommend that if you know anybody who could be interested in find more about the scheme, just they can go and please let them know that they can go and find that information. I just want to give you a little bit of update about a research report that we have just going to launch on 28th of September. I'm not revealing the finding of the research because we are going to launch it at the end of this month, 28th of September. You're welcome to join us. So in this report, is based on the experience of the lawyers. More than 100 cases has been studied for preparing this report. And also this report has been backed up by conducting focus group discussion with members of the community to know their views about the challenges Afghans facing for access to the safe routes. And also the lawyers and their clients had the challenges of going through their cases and access to the safe routes, what they have gone through. So we have explained all this information in this report. We have also had when we couldn't get enough information in our focus group discussion, we did in-depth one-to-one interviews with the clients as well and backed it up, our findings with in-depth interviews as well. In the main findings, just a couple of things I'm going to mention is, that one of the key challenges, of course, is the long delay on the process of the application and the ambiguity of who is really reviewing the application. It's OMD, it is Home Office, or it's through which process it's going through. So its delays is starting from the time someone is submitting their application,
when it's being reviewed by MOD departments, whether that person is eligible or not, and then if they are eligible, their application is being referred to the Home Office, and sometimes this kind of communication is, in some application we found is not really clear, but that if this application is successful, will be go to Home Office, and then Home Office will go through the application and we'll see if someone is eligible for a fee waiver or eligible for a biometric waiver or not. So if they're eligible, then lawyers will apply for the fee waiver or biometric waiver. But if their application of fee waiver and biometrics are being rejected, it just add to the process is being delayed further. Because when they submit for the fee waiver and biometric waiver, it needs another application of very, very long list of documents need to be provided to just that person being eligible for the waiver. And the problem is there is no VAC in Kabul, so it makes it more harder for the clients to go and make register their biometric, and they have to go through the very dangerous journey, cross the border, go to Pakistan or other regional countries to register their biometric. And in the meantime, because it's a very long process, if something happens in the history of the family, there is a changes happen in the history of the family that makes it more complicated. For example, if some member of the family is being killed or lost for a reason, or a new additional member of family added to this family, that applications make it more complicated, so it's being restarted. Or some of the cases there are, because of this situation, someone might be here in the UK under the ICRS scheme, but his husband might be, for example, a British citizen, or under human rights protection, or they have a child who's a British, they have adult child there in Afghanistan, they have additional family members with a different status. So these things are so complicated that the DESI schemes make it more complicated, and each process they have put lots of barrier in each sections they are going through. And that is something the lawyers are explaining to each clients, that what routes are available for them, what's the best route for that person. It's going through for family reunion through a British citizen of their family member, or someone who is with ILR status, or someone with refugee status, which passes better. So of course, refugee status has more opportunities, family reunion than other status. So it is always advisable for any situation and any condition to take legal advice, but the guides or materials are just giving you as general information. Even the Arab Survivor Guide has been prepared for those that don't have access to a legal lawyer. They can, I'm finishing. They can use that guide, but it is always advisable to take legal advisors' advice for your case. Just the last point, that all these materials are being circulated to our monthly newsletter. If you're interested to know more about us, if you want to get more updated information about the schemes and about the material, just subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you so much. There was other information I would like to.
Last but not least, he is very prominent Afghan international current journalist and a leading journalist of ITV media. He has rich experience in communication in media, not only with national media outlet, but also with UN agencies. He's a graduate of Universal Institute in Journalism, has a degree in Institute of Universal Journalism, and of course a graduate of Kabul University. So alumni of Kabul University like me. He is also former editor-in-chief and head news of current affairs with the or ITV. So without further ado, although he is going to talk about journalism, freedom of expression, and media condition under the current de facto authorities, but we would be also very delighted to hear about some of his insight about his profession in the UK. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nasifa John. Good afternoon and hello everyone. It's first time let me to appreciate and thanks from AISS and Dr. Muradian that prepared this event for all of us to bring together, and especially for me it's honor that I have seen many of my friends and colleagues after 2 years after the Kabul collapsed, and it's the first time that I have been seeing and just had a short chatting with them because we have a lot of memories. We had a lot of memories in Afghanistan on that time because as Nadifa John mentioned that I am an Afghan journalist. I have been working for more than 10 years in Afghanistan with many media outlets and UN agencies, especially in the past years. I was leading and I was head of editor-in-chief and head of news and current affairs of One TV, and One TV was one of the prominent TV channels in Afghanistan, and it was a mix of news channels and entertainment, and we had many political talk shows, and beside that, it's about more than 2 years that I am in the UK. Before that, I had also traveled and visited in UK, but before the collapse of Kabul, 1 month before I had a trip here, then I stayed because everything has been changed in Afghanistan, and there was a regime change, and it has forced all the Afghan people, the Afghan journalists, especially the Afghan women. Some of them have been stayed, and some of them have been forced to leave the country, and trying to find a new home, a new environment, and new things that should be faced with the challenges, but to find a solution for that. So today I will talk briefly in 3 points. One about the media history in Afghanistan, especially. I'm not going to mention long, but shortly about the 20 years. One of the success history of Afghanistan was media, freedom of expression and free media and independent media in Afghanistan. The second about the current situation that Afghanistan, especially Afghan journalists, Afghan female journalists are facing in Afghanistan. And shortly we'll talk about Afghanistan International TV or violent media that has been started. It is broadcasting on the day that Afghanistan collapsed, and a group of Afghan professional journalists came together and started from London based, and we have now the offices in Washington, D.C. and other countries to be the voice of Afghan people, to show the realities that Afghanistan is facing with that, and do not shut off the voice of Afghan people. And our aim was to document the situation, the human rights violation in Afghanistan, and whatever it's happened, to show the world that it's the situation that Afghanistan are facing nowadays. As all of us know that Afghanistan has a past history of media from 1940 until 2021. We had steps and forward freedom of expression and media history in Afghanistan, but I'm going to talk about the past 20 years. In the past 20 years, after the Bonn Conference, we has seen a free media in Afghanistan that grew and expanded, and especially in the recent years, Afghan freedom expression, Afghan free media was one of the greatest media in the regional, and we had professional journalism, we had professional TV channels, media workers that had brought happiness and joy among the families inside covering the news, inside covering the incident that was happening in Afghanistan. because you know that before the collapse of Kabul, there was, I think, more than 600 TV channels and radio stations in Afghanistan. We had more than 12,000 journalists. Most of them were females that they had born and grew in the past 20 years in Afghanistan, and they raised. But nowadays, it is not the day that we had in the past. But nowadays, as the new index shows that from the more than 6 TV channels and radios, more than nearly 400 has been shut down. Many journalists have left the countries. The journalists who were remained in Afghanistan, they are facing with many challenges, from arresting, beating, torture, or the restrictions and self-censors they are facing with that. We have more than 100 of cases in the past 2 years that Afghan journalists has been arrested and tortured and imprisoned, and they have their basic rights to show what is going on in Afghanistan. And the issues that from the 15th August, 80% of Afghan female journalists have lost their jobs, or they have forced to leave their jobs and stayed in the homes. And you have not found any single female journalist in more than 20 provinces that there should be journalists or to cover the events, to show the realities that is on the ground in Afghanistan. Then on the other issues, we have a lot of Taliban intelligence staffs in the media rooms, in the media newsrooms from the culture ministries. They have introduced many of their staffs to control and oversee the media, what is going on in the media in Afghanistan. They have censored the media, they are seeing their context, and they are not let any Afghan journalist to talk or to show the realities in Afghanistan. For example, many Afghan journalists know that an incident happened in some parts of Afghanistan, like an explosion, but they have no right to broadcast that news or to publish that news until the Taliban will not let them. And the second issue that nowadays Afghan journalists are facing is one of the most important is their economic challenges. As we know that many of Afghan journalists have been abandoned, and they have been living in the home without any good conditions, and they are, I think some of them are dealing with mental challenges. As I have talked with many of the Afghan journalists, with my former colleagues, with my former friends, that they are still in Afghanistan, and they have a very, very dangerous and a very bad histories they are telling with me. For example, 2 of my colleagues from One TV, the Taliban had arrested them and put them with ISIS-IK in one cell room in prison. And we have another journalist, many journalists, that their cases has not been raised and on the public and not shared with the media, because their families are afraid that if the issue will come out, maybe he will lose his life, or the Taliban will not leave them to be survive. For that case, I know many Afghan journalists that they are in the Taliban prison, but their families are trying to find ways for their survivors, or to talk with the Taliban, with the tribal elders, to find a way that they should be, the Taliban should leave them from the prison. It is the situation of Afghan media that nowadays, like Afghan women, that now they are facing with the challenges that they are abandoned in a country, they have no rights about their basic rights. While it's interesting for me, and on the other side, it is very some things that are not good. We are talking and we are calling the Taliban to give the woman about their right is education. While the other countries, it is the basic right for everyone, for every person to have the right of education. But on the other issues, I'm talking about the current situation of the Afghanistan International that I have mentioned before, that the day when the Kabul collapsed, I think there is many different arguments about the situation that has been changed in Afghanistan. Many call it political changes. Some others call it maybe a political deal with the Taliban. But from our sides, from Afghan journalists, we call it grabs of power by force, because I was an Afghan journalist who was witnessed the Doha process because I traveled many times in Doha on the day when the deal agreement was signed between Ambassador Khalilzad and the Taliban delegation on the leadership of Mullah Brother. I was on the Doha, on the salon, on the conference room when the deal was signed. On that day, there was two different kinds of feelings among Afghans. Afghan journalists, on one side, they were happy that maybe this deal will solve the Afghan challenges and bring a new happiness and will solve the future of Afghanistan conflict. But on the other side, we had some concern and anxieties in our heart, in our minds, that what will happen on the future of Afghanistan. Is it the deal that will change the Afghanistan atmosphere and environment and bring an stability and improvement for Afghanistan? But instead, we have been seen. When the Kabul collapsed, as I mentioned, a group of Afghan journalists came in the UK. They have started Afghanistan International. On that day, I remember that we were 4 or 3%. We were working days and nights. I knew many of my presenters, they had live coverage of news covering for 20 hours. And they had only a short break of 2 or 3 hours. They were stayed asleep, then they came back and started their work. Nowadays, we have 18 hours of news coverage with 3 daily political shows, and we have many journalists abroad, not in UK, we have in Pakistan, Turkey, Russia, and in DC. On the other side, recently we have launched our Pashto channels. Nowadays it has 1 hour political talk show, but we hope and we are trying to separate the news channel with an independent news channel to have 14 or 15 hours news channels coverage. In the end, just I have mentioned that we know the situation in Afghanistan, we know the crisis, the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, but we should not lose our hope. We should stand for the future of Afghan generation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Haidari sir. I think more than media, no other topic can be important. It gives a very vital window to our beloved country of Afghanistan. And you mentioned very important points that I wouldn't repeat due to the time. And I will just briefly open the floor to our audience for questions. And please bring your questions because the next session is for lunch, and I'm sure you don't want to delay that. Thank you.
Yeah. My question is for Shamim. You talked about the Ukrainian and Syrian and Afghan schemes. So I just wanted to know, is there any finding in comparison these 3 schemes or not?
Thank you. If you can also briefly introduce yourselves. Shall I go to the gentleman? You had already the opportunity for presenting. I'll come back to you next. Yes, please.
This is Nazir Rasuli. Just I have a question from Ahmad Haidari, since as you have already mentioned that the media community now in Afghanistan is censored, and it's very hard for a reporter in Afghanistan to report what's going on inside Afghanistan. So how you get the report from Afghanistan and to represent the realities of Afghanistan to the world from Afghanistan?
I think a very important question that we all have in mind when we're looking at the course from Afghan International. Please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My question is also to Mr. Haidari. And hats off to media family. In the last 20 years, when the blast was happening, they were the very first people who were reaching out there and giving the reports to Afghan people on the incident. So hats off for the work that they did there. My question is, you know, what's happening in the country about the girls' education, which you also talked about it. Don't you think it's the role of media to challenge their decision when they said it's a cultural issue and we do not let Afghan girls to go to school? I think it's important to bring up success stories and documentaries that it never was a cultural issue. The good example would be 5 or 6 years before we had seen the Concord toppers for Afghan girls. So we need to bring up such good examples to the people, to the international community, that it never was a part of the culture of Afghanistan that we're not letting know. We know that they're the great and brave minds, so why should we stop them to not go to education? So, I mean, such documentaries, such success stories has to be displayed, that the world should know, and all of the international community should know that we have such community.
Thank you so much. So please pursue.
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, so you may know that the Syrian scheme and both Ukraine schemes are very generous schemes than Afghan schemes, especially in a part of family reunion. As Ukraine family reunion is very generous. They can bring any member of their family. They can bring their adult member of their family. They can sponsor their relatives, uncles, and cousins, but it is not the case with Afghan schemes. The Afghan schemes only focus with their immediate family members, which is in British types of definition of family or European definition of families, husband and wife and children, and even children under 18. And even children over 18 is not included, and they will not be supported in Afghan scheme. Just only under special circumstances, and that's only Arab and other scheme. We have not compared. Our studies only focus on experience of the lawyers working with the cases, and mainly focusing with the cases we have with Afghans. But I can refer you to the another reports that they have done really comparison, that is Justice. I'm not sure if I've even read it or not. Justice released a really comprehensive report comparing Afghan scheme with Syrian and also Ukraine. And our lawyers work with the justice as well, and some of the cases of our clients has also been included in a justice. I can share the details if necessary.
Thank you so much. First question. You know, nowadays Afghan journalists are facing with a difficult situation, especially when you are a journalist and trying to cover a news that should be accurate, independent, fair, and free. And you have to think about all the parts of the news or reports. On that time, you feel that how it is difficult for a journalist that you are not on the ground. You have received some things that you all know it is fake or correct, but you have to find a solution for that. Nowadays, we have expanded the journalism among all families in Afghanistan. We have citizen journalism. As all of us in here are journalists. When we have Facebook, we have X, we have Twitter, we are tweeting something and explore our expressions and writing some things, it means that all of us are journalists. And it is the history of journalism revolutions. Based on the question, we receive daily 40 UGC. You know, for UGC means that we receive 40 video clips, pictures by videos. They are mentioning that people are sending to us from across Afghanistan, from Kandahar to Bamyan, from Bamyan to Helmand, from Helmand to Panjshir. We have receiving many stories with the videos, with the correct figures of the news. But beside that, we have professional teams here. They are checking and they are verifying and they are saying if it is the correct news or not, and or not. Then they have their source in Kabul and double checking with them. Then we publish the news. Because we, as I mentioned, now we have citizen journalism in Afghanistan. Regarding the second questions, I'm agreeing with you, sir, that we have now started a program. We are making some documentaries, and it is now launched in Afghanistan International TV. And we had some documentaries. One was about the role of economic works in Afghanistan in the past 20 years. how they had defined or they collected the money, with which groups they had linked with ISIS, with Al-Qaeda, or with the other groups in the region. We are trying to profile those celebrities, those especially the girls that they had a success history in the past 20 years in Afghanistan, especially regarding the education, and we are trying to make a documentary on her or them. That our teams are working hardly in London, in Washington DC. They are trying to profile those girls that shows that the whole that we had in the past 20 years had such a success girls in Afghanistan, and nowadays all of them have been abandoned. That unfortunately the Afghan education and the Afghan girls' education has been changed, a political platform for the international community and the Taliban. And instead of focusing and pressuring on the Taliban that this is the basic right of women and girls in Afghanistan, but on the tables behind the doors, they are trying to deal the Afghan rights of education and Afghan girls of education for their political agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, just by your permission, I will go for another question by from this side, from our respected guest. Could you? Yes,
let me first thank Mr. Murad, Dr. Muradian, and other Afghan Institute for Strategic Studies staff and officials to hold this valuable convening of Afghan academics and professionals. My question actually refers to Ms. Sarabi from API regarding the clarity of the situation, immigration situation of persons come under ACRS. For example, the problem becomes more outstanding when, for example, coming to some travel documents, like for example refugee travel documents or certificate of travel or things like that, because we actually made that trial and error to apply for such a kind of document for the assurance of better travel conditions, for example, to European countries or so, things like that. But we receive, it cost us some amount of money for nothing, to be honest. So given the fact that, for example, our national passports will come to an end and will get expired maybe some years or some months later, and who knows what will happen to the embassy in UK. So would it be a clarity, because even Home Office couldn't clarify us under which category we come, so could the API clarify us or give us some advice on really what our residency or immigration status would be, and under what kind of eligibility we may receive that kind of document in case? Thank you. My name is, by the way, Mehdi Salami. Thank you.
Hi, Mehdi. Thanks so much for your question. As I mentioned earlier, the problem with the schemes are not only the complication of that how they can reunite with their families, but there are other complications as well, that those who have come in the UK and their ACRS schemes, they are not being recognized as a refugee, especially those under pathway 1 and pathway 3. So when they're not coming as a refugee, you're not eligible to apply for refugee travel documents, which is the one with the blue cover. So you're not because you're not being recognized as a refugee. But then, in addition to that, you can apply for a certificate of travel. Refugee travel documents has more value than certificate of travel for some countries, more likely to provide visa for you. Even myself, as a refugee, I had the travel documents and I faced an enormous challenge. It is not really guaranteed that you will get a visa with that as well. That is right. Unfortunately, Home Office is not
not explaining anything about those things, and they are categorizing newcomers based on their own criteria without any explanation. I'm happy to talk with you more details and provide other information if necessary. I'm so sorry for all this trouble you're going through.
So just one last question, that she will be very brief. Over to you.
What is the family reunification application? Because they are not known as refugees, can they apply? And based on your research and work and experience, what do you think? What would be the reason or result of those applications? Because I know a family that has submitted application until 9 months they're waiting, but they haven't heard anything about it. What is your experience in this? Thank you.
Yeah, so those under ACRS, there's no family reunion rules for ACRS applicant. They have to go to immigration rules, family reunion, which is Appendix FM. That takes a very difficult path than our one, because you have to really meet the criteria of immigration rules. So your question was that you have submitted an application and it's been delayed for very long, and what is the next step?
Yeah, I know that ACRS doesn't have such a route for family reunification. We went through legal ways, but we still have to have because we are not refugees, we don't have refugee status. What do you think? So we have completed or we have all the requirements, but one trick to find is that we are not known as refugees.
Yeah, because you can't use that power. So this is a complicated case. It is out of rule case. So this is not something that it is not within the rule to be explained. That if you meet a lawyer, they can find a way to submit the application out of the rule.
Very much, Ms. Sarabi. So I will just conclude the session, and my apology for those that couldn't pose their questions, and I'm sure you will find opportunity to talk to our esteemed speakers during the lunch or other breaks. So I will invite you for a round of applause, and thank you for your attention.